All right, after an insane week of free agency moves trades and everything in between, we are giving you one winner and loser each for Dynasty football purposes, okay? Whether it was a signing that came in, whether it was a trade, these might not be the biggest winners or losers, but there are players that we wanted to highlight that maybe weren't obvious, that we think either it helped their stock in Dynasty or it hurt their stock in Dynasty.
Right.
So I'm going to give you my first winner, my only winner. Like, there's a lot more, but the only one I'm going to present today.
Right.
And that is Josh Jacobs Jingleheimer Schmidt. Why is Josh Jacobs a winner? Let's talk about this Raiders offense as a whole, okay? This might not be the obvious player to bring up. I could have told you that, Derek Carr is a winner. That's obvious, but I wanted to find someone who you maybe weren't thinking about just yet. Okay, let's talk about this Raiders offense as a whole. It's going to be a much better offense, and it's going to score a lot more points in 2022. In 2021, the Raiders scored the 11th fewest points. Defense was much improved. The offense was okay. Scored the 11th fewest points, though, so it wasn't doing them really any favors. And the 11th fewest touchdowns as well. So let's actually look, because at this point, I feel as if the Raiders can be a top 10 offense. I think that's a very realistic possibility, if not better. Okay, so let's take a look last year at the top 10 scoring offenses, okay, who put up the most touchdowns, the top 10 scoring offenses and touchdowns in the NFL in 2021, okay? 9 of the top 10 had two things in common, okay? Number one, elite quarterback play. Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Herbert, Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, Burrow, Murray, Stafford. Number two, elite wide receivers. Amari and CeeDee, Evans and Godwin, Keenan and Mike, Tyreek and Kelsey, Diggs, Adams, Chase and Higgins, D-Hop, Kupp. The one oddball, because I said 9 out of the 10 teams had these two things in common, elite quarterback play and elite wide receivers. The one oddball there in the top 10 this year, the Colts with Jonathan Taylor, okay, because he was playing at an MVP level. He was carrying this offense. And to be fair, like, Carson Wentz and Michael Pittman were good, but they definitely weren't the elite, so I didn't want to put them in that category. So let's look at this. What do the Raiders have? Well, in my opinion, they have a very above average quarterback at Derek Carr. I think you could consider him a top 12 quarterback in the NFL right now. I would consider him that. And without question, the best wide receiver in the game right now in Davante Adams, okay? So let's take a look. Is there a correlation here? Let's look at the running back finishes last year for those top 10 scoring teams. The Cowboys scored the most touchdowns. Zeke was the RB7. Then it was the Bucks. Lenny was the RB6. Then it was the Chargers. Eckler was the RB2. Then it was the Chiefs. And keep in mind, Clyde missed 7 games. Team is pass happy, so he was RB46. Then we have the Bills, who Singletary was the RB18. And that's just because of the offense that he was a part of. Let's be honest, Singletary's nothing special. Packers had Aaron Jones at RB11. 11. The Bengals, Joe Mixon RB4. Cardinals, James Conner RB5. Then you have the Rams, who kind of had Henderson. He's a little bit of an oddball there. And then the Colts at JT RB1. There's some oddballs there, but what I'm trying to bring us to is there is a correlation between top quarterback and wide receiver play and running back fantasy value. And by the way, Josh Jacobs has already been top 12 as a running back for 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. And the offense just got much, much better. All right. I want to help us. I want you guys to, I'm doing my best to help you see what I'm seeing. Think Joe Mixon from 2020 to 2021. All right. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but what changed about that Bengals offense from 2020 to 2021 that helped Mixon finish as a top 5 running back? What allowed him to break out? Did the offensive line improve? No, not at all. The offensive line did not improve. It was a truly elite wide receiver that stepped in Jamar Chase that completely unlocked his game in this offense as a whole. And they scored a lot more points than they did the year before. Mixon from 2020 to 2021, he goes from 50th in red zone touches to 5th, 46th in goal line carries to 4th. All right. Now, the 2021 Raiders, that offense is nowhere near as bad as what the Bengals offense was in 2020.
Okay.
But I think we could see a similar breakout here for Josh Jacobs. And it's so crazy to say that we could see a breakout when this guy has already finished RB8. I mean, he's finished RB8 2 years ago, and then he finished, RB11 this year, if I'm not mistaken. So the Dynasty community, in my opinion, has constantly been underlooking Josh Jacobs, and this move is going to drastically help him. Does he get 64 targets like he did last year this year? Probably not, okay? But Mixon had 16 less targets than JJ and still finished RB4. So why did he do that? Again, I think it was because the offense was elite and opportunities followed. When you have an elite quarterback, an elite wide receiver. Oh, and by the way, Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. This team is going to be scoring a lot more points, and more points equals more scoring opportunities for your running back. So in conclusion, above average quarterback play plus elite wide receiver play equals more scoring opportunities. More scoring opportunities equals a great future for Josh Jacobs in Las Vegas, and there are more top 12 finishes ahead. I think this year he could finish as a top 8 running back. I think that's a very realistic possibility, okay? Assuming that he stays healthy for all those games. He's already done it before. They didn't have Devontae Adams in that team, and he finished RB11 last year. Hunter Renfrow was the wide receiver 1, and Darren Waller missed how many games? So to me, there might be less targets, but this is going to be a way more efficient offense. I think we'll see double-digit touchdowns for Josh Jacobs this year. I think that's a very realistic possibility.
Okay.
So I've already been higher on Josh Jacobs in the community. I had him as my RB15 before this move.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after Devontae Adams comes in and all the other moves that they made, because the defense improved as well there, he's now my running back 12 in Dynasty. He just turned 24. He is 1 month older than Najee Harris. Still 2 years left on his rookie deal.
Right.
Why are we always undervaluing Josh Jacobs? I said this last year. I said he was a great buy in Dynasty startups.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't understand why the community is, hopefully now, as I'm bringing this, we can all be on the same page. But I just feel like he's being massively undervalued, and he's a huge, huge winner. And if we're talking about startup value, he's currently going at the end of the 6th round, beginning of the 7th. I love that value there. I mean, if I can have Josh Jacobs as my running back 2 on my team, win now or futuristic, feels great to me. Feels great.
No, it's good. It's great. I think what's going to happen, and we've seen it already in the fantasy community, is Josh Jacobs going higher and higher and higher. And as we get close into the season, I think maybe the value would just be too high, whereas like, I don't know if I can take him there.
No one's talking about him. No. What do you mean his value's getting higher?
I think the community is talking about him. A lot of people since the trade, I've seen just stuff on Twitter or other people talking about it. Like, I'm not saying everyone's talking about him. I've seen other people. I'm not saying that, like, I'm not trying to downplay your take. I'm just saying I think as we get closer, everyone's going to see what you just said, you know, and the value is going to go up, and it's going to go up.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. My first winner for the my first winner for free agency winners and losers is Allen Robinson. Okay, obviously this is for me the biggest win for Allen Robinson, not only in a fantasy perspective, as a personal perspective. You know, we spoke to him on an app called Clubhouse a long time ago. I fumbled the ball and I asked him a question. I was like, so does it matter where you play and where you are? And so he said it was a huge thing. You know, he wants to be in a nice place. He's been in Chicago. It was a windy city. He didn't want to be there long term, but also the money was a big thing. He signed a 3-year contract extension. So I think that's great. Then he gets signed to the Rams. Then Roberto Woods gets traded to the Titans. That was the biggest thing. When he first got traded to the Rams, everyone was like, well, there's too many mouths to feed now. Well, now you have Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, OBJ could be getting re-signed, and that still could happen, right? And I think that's okay because I do believe now that Allen Robinson's there and OBJ is not signed, Allen Robinson, I feel like it's kind of guaranteed those targets potentially. I could be wrong, but I do believe that's how I'm feeling. Anyways, Robert Woods, what was he demanding? 129 targets. If he would have played the whole season right after, if he didn't tear his ACL, that would have been top 15 among wide receivers, amongst targets. 129 targets. Okay, he was averaging 7 targets per game, 15 points per game. Those targets, those fantasy points are going to Allen Robinson if OBJ does not get signed, which I'm excited about. And if OBJ does get signed, maybe he averages 5 targets per game. Maybe he drops down to 10 points per game. That's still fantastic for Allen Robinson moving forward. Once again, Robert Woods, when healthy, weeks 1 to 9, he was wide receiver 12. Allen Robinson has been that before, has been well above that before. He didn't have Cooper Kupp around him. He didn't have Matthew Stafford throwing him the ball. So I think that's fantastic for Allen Robinson moving forward. Okay, so when he got traded to the Rams, he was my wide receiver 36 from the jump. Okay, I was like, oh, Robert Woods is there. We'll see. I don't want to move him too far. And then that was when he got traded to the Rams. Before he got traded to the Rams. Then he got traded to the Rams, and he was wide receiver 30. That was Robert Woods. I don't want to trade him too high. Now he's my wide receiver 27 without Robert Woods. I do believe he can get higher if once we get into the season and the OBJ signing is not confirmed, or it is confirmed that he's not getting signed, then I think he can go a lot higher, in my personal opinion. Okay, so I think this is a perfect opportunity for you to get him, and he's still going in drafts really, really late in startups. He's going 10, late 9, early 10. I've seen him going as late as 11th so far. I think it's going to be comfortable, and he's going to be steady there because he is 28 years old. It's only a 3-year contract, and a lot of people believe that he's overshadowed by Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, that's the guy. Maybe he does get some targets. There's a lot of question marks moving forward, but I think Allen Robinson wins tremendously moving forward in a fantasy perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he wins as well. All right, I'm going to give you my first loser. That's Antonio Gibson. I'll just say, he's not going to go in the 10th round, though. No,
I don't think he'll go there. I think he can go earlier than that. But at this moment, if you have a startup draft right now, I think you can definitely get him, 8, 9, depending on how people see it. Because he was going around a lot of big people. Like our last draft, he was going around Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Gallup went above him. So it just really depends on who you prefer, age-wise and talent-wise and everything. There's so many things to consider.
All right, I'm going to give my first loser, and that is Antonio Gibson. It's painful for anyone who owns Gibson. When JD was announced to Buffalo, the social media world, the Twitterverse, it was everyone was screaming Gibson season. Oh my God, Gibson's a top 5 running back now. And I remember coming on the live stream that day and everyone was asking us about it, and I just said, I promise you this is not the running back room that they're going to enter the league this year with. They will either draft someone or they're going to bring someone else in through free agency. Then the next day, J.D. McKissic is back, just like that. So, and right. I think that this massively, it doesn't necessarily hurt Gibson compared to last year, but it absolutely caps his ceiling. And not only does it cap his ceiling for this year, because the conversation's always been, well, man, at some point JD's going to move on. Well, now he's signed for another 2 years, and he's been an integral part of this offense. As a Washington fan, I know this. I mean, he has been super important to this team. And the biggest issue for me here is the ceiling cap on Antonio Gibson. Okay, let's look at targets since Gibson came into the league for these two running backs. In 2020, Antonio Gibson had the 25th most targets. This was his rookie season with 44. J.D. McKissic had the most targets amongst any running backs that year with 110. Why is that? Let's look at the context. Well, Alex Smith was there, and he was the check down king. I mean, he was playing on one bum leg, so almost every other play, it was a check down to J.D. McKissic. Let's look at last year, okay, 2021. Mm-hmm. Gibson was 21st in targets amongst running backs with 52, or 3.2 per game. Okay, J.D. McKissic last year was 19th in targets, so he still had more targets than Gibson, and he had 4.8 targets per game. You have to keep in mind he missed 6 games, but if we're looking at a per game basis, right, he still averaged almost 2 more targets per game than Antonio Gibson. McKissic finishes as a running back 37 last year, Gibson as a running back 10. But again, that 6-game stretch to end the season with no McKissic was very, very good for Gibson. And Gibson owners, I feel you right now. I have Gibson in a couple leagues. I'm reaching out. I'm saying, I feel you. It's pain. We're here together. Should I remind you, though, of the pain we've gone through. How many 2-minute drills have been stolen by J.D. McKissic?
Oh my goodness.
Okay. How many screen passes for a touchdown have been stolen by J.D. McKissic? Okay. Throwing kisses to the crowd in the end zone while Gibson's on the sideline. All right. The unfortunate thing for both of these running backs is that both of their ceilings are very capped by each other. This is ideal scenario for Washington to get J.D. McKissic back this cheap for 2 years, but it is not ideal for fantasy purposes, okay?
Right.
Now, you're saying, well, Carson's coming in. Maybe this offense is better. This is the best quarterback that Washington's had in a while. I think that's true, but Scott Turner isn't leaving. Our offensive coordinator, same offensive coordinator for the past couple of years, he just re-signed a 3-year extension, okay? So while Carson might bring hope and change, Scott Turner's still there. And ultimately, he makes the decisions on how the offense is run, on where the running back rotation lies, right? So he's not leaving anywhere. McKissic is back. It's been successful. So ultimately, I think since Gibson has been into the league, the conversation has been if he could just get 3 down work, first, second, third down, if he could just be the workhorse.
Right.
It's just not going to happen at this point unless there's an injury to J.D. McKissic, and we don't wish that upon anyone. At this point, I really do think it takes away from his top 5 upside for at least the next 2 years. Now, that being said, he's still been a very, very good running back, okay? So he's finished, I think, RB10 and RB12. So he's still been very, very good with J.D. McKissic, but but the gap between an RB12 finish and a top 4 or 5 finish,
right,
that's a very big gap in points. And a lot of that has to correlate typically with targets. If you look at those top running backs or the Derrick Henrys of the world who just get a billion touchdowns every year and a billion touches. So, before McKissic left, I assumed that he would move on. So I had Gibson as my RB8 in these offseason rankings. And now that McKissic is back, I have Gibson as my RB10. So this is absolutely not an anti-Gibson take, but I do think that it hurts his value. And in startups, at least the ones that are happening in our community, in these startup mocks, I think he's going way too early. I mean, he's been going at the 3-1,
really
early third round, and he's been going as a running back 6 in those mock drafts. For me, that's just too high. I would much rather prefer Antonio Gibson in the 4th to 5th round at this point, knowing what we know and knowing that the ceiling is capped. And by the way, I just want to give an honorable mention before you go for the biggest losers of free agency. To be honest, guys, it's every single rookie running back.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Because how many landing spots can we point to now that really makes sense for a rookie running back to come in and dominate? It is quite difficult to find perfect landing spots for these rookie running backs. So their value goes down at this point, in my opinion. But who's your biggest loser or a loser of free agency?
My biggest loser, and look, Zach and I always prepare the night before and we go in, and I had this really good take from Michael Pittman, and then overnight, because obviously we live in Sydney, Australia, Matt Ryan gets traded to the Colts. So now I think that changes a lot of things for me. And, I was going to say,
which is great for Pittman.
Yeah, which is great for Pittman, 100%. I think, and we said it right before we got on stream, right before we started this video, we was like, well, does this really help, him for the long term, Michael Pittman or the Colts long term? This is more like a sidestep with Carson Wentz. We just don't know yet. It's very, very interesting. But let's look at the Falcons side of the ball, because I think that is the biggest loser now, in my opinion. Let's look at what has happened the past year and a half or 2 years. They cut Julio Jones around last year, release him, and then he goes to the Titans. They draft Kyle Pitts, which is probably the best thing that ever happened to them. Kyle really gets suspended. They were terrible all around last year in 2021. They had a terrible offensive line. They had no run game. They had no weapons because Kyle really opts out. It was bad all around, and Kyle Pitts was getting double teamed out the wazoo. Like, he couldn't do anything, even though he finished with over 1,000 yards and no touchdowns or 1 touchdown. Yeah, they couldn't do anything. Okay, then in this offseason, all the talks of the Falcons are now in contention getting Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, we thought it was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Everything was leading to, Deshaun Watson's going to the Falcons. Deshaun, it's fine. Like, Kyle Pitts, he's for sure going to be number one guy. He already was, but now is solidified for the next 5, 6, 7 years. And we were happy, we were excited, and then they pull out, or he pulls out Deshaun Watson. Pause. And then he goes to the Browns, and now the Falcons are left like, well, twiddling our thumbs and they extended Matt Ryan's bonus. That was like, you know what? Let's see, because hopefully Deshaun Watson can come to us. And then they trade him to the Colts for a third round pick. Okay. I don't know what's going to happen now. I think
they have Marcus Mariota.
Yes, and now they have Marcus Mariota, which that's not the long-term answer. Now the second question for the community is it worth drafting a Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett that early? Some people say
I think they're going to do it.
Some people say yes, and one, is Malik Willis even going to be there? Does Detroit somehow take Malik? If that happens, then it could be Pickett. Is Pickett worth taking at the 4 or at the 3?
Everything I've heard is that Pickett is going to Carolina.
Yeah, and everything I've heard, there's so many different scenarios that like we can get into those scenarios. We just don't know what's going to happen. So right now, at this very moment, the Atlanta Falcons feel like they're in shambles. They re-signed Cordell Patterson for a 2-year extension, which feels like, well, why? Because I hope like you can get a running back in the draft. Like he's not the long-term answer. So I feel like this team is going to be in a very low period for the next year. And I'm not going to want anyone on this team besides whoever that rookie quarterback is going to be, even if they do take that rookie quarterback.
You don't want Kyle Pitts?
Oh, 100%. No doubt. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Of course I want Kyle Pitts, but
okay.
Just in general, it feels like I can't do anything with this team. No one on this team is going to be fantasy relevant. It feels like if they do get a wide receiver in the second round, who's going to be the quarterback? Right. We just don't know. So right now, my biggest loser in this offseason has been the Atlanta Falcons, because I thought that if there was one thing I'm comfortable with is whoever was going to go there and have Matt Ryan for the next 2 years, because the expectation was that they were going to draft a quarterback. Let them sit behind Matt Ryan. Let them sit, let them develop. And, you have an MVP caliber quarterback who led the league. He was top 5, top 3 for a couple years in yards, passing yards. That's some good leadership, to learn under. And that's no longer there. So it's going to be very interesting moving forward. I just think they're in a downward spiral right now. Sorry for all the Atlanta Falcon fans.
Yeah, it's pretty painful out there, but this hasn't changed how I view Pitts. I just wanted to be clear on that.
Agreed.
I still view him as a tight end 1, and I still am comfortable taking him in the second round of startups, because I don't think that it's going to be the long-term answer. They will figure something out, and maybe it is Malik at 8, and maybe they are able to build this great connection, and we've seen the potential in Malik, so it's interesting.
Thought process.
I actually don't think that this is bad for Atlanta Falcons fans, because it's time to move on. And honestly, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I don't feel like we talked about this. I think Matt Ryan is an upgrade over Carson Wentz for the Colts, but I don't know that this is taking them to the Super Bowl. Is it really that big of an upgrade? Statistically, it's a downgrade, but if we're looking at leadership and play style, it's an upgrade. I don't know. I think it's great for Pittman in fantasy, though. Yeah,
I think this could be a one and done deal. I think they would take an opportunity to get a quarterback still in the 2023 draft. Why not? The Colts specifically.
We'll see. They're not going to be high enough.
Yeah, and then same thing with the Falcons. I'll be surprised if they, we're going to stack up on weapons and we're just going to have one bad year with Marcus Mariota and then get a quarterback in 2023. That's another thing that can happen.
Maybe it's Drake London or Wilson at 8, and they ride with Mariota.
And who knows? Anything can happen at this moment, it feels like.
All right, let us know who are your biggest winners and losers of the free agency period for Dynasty. Comment down below.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLandFam.